Hello, everyone. My name is Nestor Adrianzen. Thank you, guys, for being part of this discussion today. So with me is Javier Gomez, Diego Lopez. These are two professionals who love Excel and Power BI. Javier Gomez has his own company called Datdata, and Diego Lopez has also his own company, SerDataPro. And of course, I'm there as well with my company called Vizxlization. So we're gonna have fun, guys. This is gonna be really entertaining, and we're gonna learn a lot about Excel and Power BI. So for those who are just starting, by learning these new, I guess, platforms or programs. So this is gonna be really, really good. Okay, so we have in the next slide, we have our itinerary. So these are the points that we will be discussing during this meeting. It is just real quick. We will have our introduction. We will introduce ourselves briefly, and then we will talk about how we met in the past. And then the next point, we will learn about data visualization by using these two awesome tools, Excel and Power BI. And also we have really, really good tips for you guys. So please be still and stay tuned. And finally, for those who wanna learn more about Excel and Power BI, we will also be sharing our educational platforms. Okay, so let's go to the next slide real quick. Introduction. So we're gonna go one by one. So Javier, please take your time. Tell us more about yourself. Tell us more about your story and what should we know about yourself?
Thank you, Nestor, and thank you, Diego. Thank you guys for having me, and I'm really excited to be here with you guys. So a little bit about myself. I'm from Mexico. I'm actually from the north side of Mexico. I used to be in Canada in the last year, but I returned to Mexico just in my previous months here. So in a nutshell, I am passionate about Power BI and Excel and information systems, actually. So I started getting into information systems after I graduated from mechatronics engineering. It's a bachelor's. And then I started working in the mining industry. And in there I started getting into information systems, mostly for industrial processes. But after that, I started getting into more or less like business management processes and how to measure those processes. So I started getting into that, and I mean, into how to measure those metrics in the businesses. And all of that, I started doing it with information systems. And most people, most businesses, because I was in small and medium-sized businesses, they mostly use Microsoft Office. Most people, they have, for instance, Office 365. They have Excel and those tools. So what I saw is that with those tools, we can do many things. So I started getting to Excel. I certified with Microsoft as a Microsoft Office specialist in Excel. There is a certification about that. And after that, I started doing a lot of things with KPIs and measuring things in many projects for many businesses as a freelancer, mostly. And after that, I started getting into Power BI in 2017. I loved it, and it was for the same purpose, helping businesses measuring their processes, mostly. So that's a little bit about myself. So I would like to know a little bit more about you guys. So that's just me. And thank you, Nestor.
Thanks, Javier. Thanks for telling us more about yourself and your passion about Excel and Power BI. All right, Diego, this is your turn.
Thanks, Nestor. And thanks, Javi, also. Well, my name is Diego Lopez. I'm also from Mexico. And actually, I'm from the same city as Javi. Actually, we met, Javi and me, we met when we were in high school. So it's been a long road since then. And right now I'm living in a city called Monterrey. It's in Mexico also, on the other side of the country, but also in the northern part. And I started using, well, working with Power BI mostly, like for visualizations, when I was working in a corporate job. So I graduated with a bachelor in engineering, industrial engineering, and there, well, I was in a department called business development for Latin America. So that included several countries in Latin America. And when I was there, like since the company follow an expansion policy where they were buying the small companies in each one of the countries, well, you were able to see that all of the different ways that companies work in each one of the countries, right? Like making whatever they can with the tools that they have. So there was this guy that was this guy or girl that was a specialist in Excel and doing the dashboards and reporting and automating us with the knowledge that she or he had. So it was like the bread of all the days, right? Like seeing this type of behaviors, right? So there was this time that one of my teammates mentioned Power BI. This was late in 2017, and it stuck me, like the name was really interesting. I don't know why. And I knew it was from Microsoft. Well, when I researched, I knew it was from Microsoft. So I thought it was that it had a great it was from a good company. That this program was being developed by a good company. So I started researching a little bit more, and it was really interesting to me to see what I was able to do, right? And I immediately looked at this program, like solving a lot of the problems that we were having in the Latin American countries, right? In each one of the operations in each country, because the program it's designed to be really flexible and to be really powerful. So I immediately started learning a lot of Power BI and trying to implement in my projects. And I also started teaching it. What I was learning, I started teaching it. And right now, well, I'm currently teaching Power BI and also using it in consulting projects. So right now we're going to speak a little bit more about that, but that's like kind of my story in this regard.
That's a good story. Thanks, Diego, for sharing it with us. Well, about myself, as it says right here, my name is Nestor Adrianzen. I'm originally from Peru, but I'm living now in the United States. In Peru, I got a undergrad degree in engineering as well. And then when I moved to the States, I got a master's in business administration. So I learned about these awesome tools when I was still in undergrad. So specifically Excel. So because of the nature of my career, I had to use Excel a lot. So I started learning by myself, going into Google, going into face-to-face classes as well. So that was when I started learning Excel. But then I learned about this data visualization tool, which is Power BI, when I was here in the States in school, which was in 2017. I learned about data visualization. I learned about Tableau first, and then after a few days, I guess, that I got involved with data visualization, I learned about Power BI as well. So I started learning more about Power BI last year. That's when I started also my YouTube channel to start teaching Power BI. But I think all of us have this in common, right? We love Power BI, we love data visualization, we love numbers, we love Excel. And I'm very excited about this interview, guys, that we will be sharing some ideas with the community. Okay?
Awesome.
Amazing, thanks.
All right, let's go to the next slide real quick. How did we connect? Tell us, Javier, about your experience. How did we connect?
Well, my experience was that, as Diego was saying, we are all in the kind of sharing content related to Excel, Power BI, data analysis. And I use mostly LinkedIn for kind of like connecting and updating myself with new content of my interest. And it's a nice community for those that don't use LinkedIn, or I mean, it's a nice community. And I would say that for me, I was one day just on the feed, like just, I don't know, when you're on Facebook, you don't know what you're doing. So normally I see the content on LinkedIn, and I saw a post related to a DAX tutorial, and I saw it. It was on YouTube, and it was from you, Nestor, and I liked it. I didn't know about you, and I decided to connect with you, Nestor, through LinkedIn. And it was easy. I think that I sent you the message and in the night, and the next day in the morning you answered me, I think. So we connected and we started talking about our passions, our interests, and looking for ways of collaborating as we are doing right now. And it was a really nice experience for me. And in that way we connected. And with Diego, he was saying that we knew each other since high school. And so I remember that after high school, because we were in different generations and different classes, so I remember that after high school, I went to the university, and he as well. I didn't know much about him, but after maybe 10 years, I mean, after high school and university and everything, I saw that Diego was actually into Excel and Power BI as well. And we chatted, and I mean, it was really nice that we were both on the same kind of industry, same interest, and just looking for ways of collaborating as well. So that was my experience. So I don't know, how about you guys?
Yeah, definitely. It's basically the same story, man, because you were the guy who connected with us. I really appreciate the connection, and this is a really good way to share ideas. You know, this is a really good way to tell what we know, right, with our community, with the Power BI community, with those guys who love Excel. And this type of collaboration definitely enriches the environment, you know, where we are right now. So that's I really appreciate that. Yeah, if you, Diego, want to tell us more about this question, how did we connect, just briefly, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, as Harry was saying, well, he connected with me at least, and we started chatting. We also collaborated in a previous session, Javi and me, and then also we made another session with several other, like the three of us that are in here right now, and two other guys. Like that was like a month ago, I think, and that's when I connected with Nestor, right? In that session or discussion that we had, that it was specifically, or we were talking specifically about the data and culture inside companies, right? So it was really interesting. It was a meeting, a discussion that Javi organized, and it was a really good, really cool experience, just as this one. And it was in Spanish though, because we Spanish also. That's when I connected with Nestor also, and with other guys, right? So we are here in round 3, so yes, looking forward for it.
That's good, man. That's good, because I know that I know that we connected through that session that we had about a month ago, as you mentioned, and I know that it was in Spanish, right? Because that's our native language, and we feel I guess, very comfortable when we're speaking our own language.
Sure.
But and then I saw that you guys are very brave, you know. And then I asked you guys, hey, would you like to try an interview in English? And you guys say, yes, let's do it. Man, you guys are brave, because, you know, speaking in a different language is quite challenging. But I really appreciate your braveness, your courage to have this interview in a different language.
I appreciate that, Nestor.
No, it was good, guys.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right. So yeah, as you guys mentioned, LinkedIn is a really nice platform. It's a good way to connect with professionals, you know. And yeah, I mean, if you guys want to connect with us, definitely LinkedIn is the way. So just send us a brief message. Hey, this is Matthew. This is Mark. I watch your tutorial, or I watch this interview. So in that way we can know who's connecting with us. That would be great. All right, let's go to the next question, guys. All right, data visualization by using Excel and Power BI. 3 questions right here. Javier, would you like to start answering these questions?
For sure. So when did the passion for Excel and Power BI start? So my passion, you know, it's difficult to tell. Like sometimes you don't know your interest until you experience something. So for me, it was like, I knew Excel. I knew that you can do stuff with Excel, like calculations and, you know, formatting cells with colors and stuff like that. But so that was me in college, actually. In the university, I didn't use Excel, but after the university, in my job, I required to use Excel a lot. And so my experience was, in a nutshell, I was in a mine, working in a mine with these information systems. And there was this, I saw his resume. He was an Excel expert. So I saw that he was doing some crazy things using Excel and Visual Basic and stuff like that with macros. So I was really curious. And he was actually a colleague of mine. It was nice. It was kind of like he was a co-worker, but he was outsourced. So he was in the same company. So, but we knew each other because we were in the same project. So I knew that he was passionate. He was passionate. He was trying to help us in a project that he wasn't involved, actually. But he knew that with Excel, he could help us. So it was really nice. And I saw what he did, and I was amazed after that. And it was like, I had to learn Excel. I had to master Excel because I saw that creativity that he did. I mean, it was something really nice. And I could talk about this like further, but it would be too much. So I started getting into Excel. I saw its capabilities. For the people that don't know Excel in an expert level, I would say Excel is quite extreme. It's really powerful. And also talking about the Power Query capabilities, not only with macros and VBA, it has a lot of capabilities. So I started using Excel. I started doing online courses, which is a source, one of the main sources that I use for learning Excel. Just finding content on YouTube, Udemy, lynda.com as well, but also face-to-face classes. That kind of content I was using, and I learned a lot, and I got certified, as I was saying, with Microsoft. And when Power BI was launched, I started getting into that because Power BI is more focused on reporting, on metrics, which is something that I like. So with Excel, you can do many things, but reporting is not the main focus, I would say. You can do reporting as well, but with Power BI, you can do reporting, you can automate like transformations from different data sources. You can start using Power BI for free. That's something really nice. So I started using it. I got certified as well as a MCP with Power BI and from Microsoft. So I liked those tools. So my recommendations after all of that is that in summary, my passion for learning those tools was because there were many solutions that you could implement for small, medium businesses or actually enterprises. And it's really intuitive doing it with those tools. I would say cost effective as well, doing those implementations with these tools. And so that was my passion. And doing online courses as an instructor right now is really another passion that I have, because I like doing businesses and growing communities for those businesses. So I wouldn't say business, I would say community, with people that are interested in those tools as well and learning about those tools. So my recommendation for the people that want to learn about Excel, Power BI, or other data analysis tools, it would be for me just to start, like not being afraid about starting using a tool. You can start for free, as I did, like just finding content on YouTube, Udemy. There are some free courses as well, different platforms that you can use. And it's really nice when you start doing something and after a day or maybe just a couple hours, you learn something, you can implement it in your business, for your boss, for a client that you have, or a friend of yours. You can help them doing something, just providing a solution. And for me, the recognition, like kind of like when you do something, you feel good. But when you do something for other people and they are like, wow, you helped me a lot, you saved my life. I was struggling with this, like helping people in that way. It's something that I like a lot. So that's me. I hope that I have answered your questions, Nestor.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, man. I appreciate your answers. Yeah, I agree. So these platforms are really great, and just we have to start, right? If we want to do something, just do it. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because that's normal. That's okay to make mistakes. All right. So thanks, Javier. Diego, would you like to answer these questions as well, please?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so when did my passion for Excel and Power BI start? Well, it was around late 2017, early 2018. And as I was saying, like one of my teammates like mentioned it. It was really subtle. And I started learning about that, and I was looking at all the possibilities, right? And as I was learning and learning more, I was seeing more and more opportunities, which was huge for me, right? And that's when my passion started for these tools. And I was also seeing that Power BI was able to automate lots of steps or work that is done, labor that is done by many people inside organizations, like the data transformations, like downloading data, like merging data sources, tables, and all of these things were able to be done with Power BI, right? So I was like hooked in, like as soon as I started to learn what was possible to do. That's when it all started. And I also like being able to do in Power BI like two areas like that are usually disconnected, right? Like it's the visualization stuff, like making graphs and telling stories with data and that, and also the part of like analytics, right? Like it's a tool that merges these two areas that are usually disconnected. Like for example, there's this guy that is really good in presentations, and then it's this other person that is really good at I don't know, VBA or Excel formulas or creating this type of models, right? So this tool like joins or merges these two areas, and that was a huge thing for me, right? So that's when it started, the passion. And the sources that I used to learn Excel and Power BI was, well, there were several. It was Microsoft's like documentation, not documentation, but videos from the team that is developing Power BI. They have their own videos. Also, Udemy courses. There are several really good ones, and those ones were some of the courses that I used to learn Power BI, because working in Power BI, and with Power BI, I'm also speaking about Power Query and Power Pivot in Excel world. So it's a different paradigm than just working with Excel, right? Starting with Excel, like you can visually see, like you can see what you are programming, right? Like this cell times this cell divided by this cell, it's going to give you this result, right? So you have the formula, you have colors mentioning the formula, the cells that you're looking at, and it's really easy. It's really visual, right? But in Power BI and in this like Power BI and Power Query and Power Pivot, well, you are actually not seeing like those kind of things. It's a little bit more abstract, right? It's something that you need to know how does it work so that you can implement it, right? So it's a different paradigm, and it's interesting. Like it's easier to jumpstart your journey using these programs if you take an structured approach. And then you have like this structured approach, like you start adding the needs that you have, right? Like for example, I need to calculate, I don't know, like working days, right? How can I do it? And you start like searching all over the web, and you start looking at YouTube videos, you start looking at forums, you start looking at blogs, and you start going to the documentation of the functions and everything like that, right? You start asking in the community, and that's when you can start like adapting these tools to your requirements, because these tools are like really flexible and powerful, so it's possible to adapt it to the specific needs of your specific problem, right? So that will be like where I learn Excel and Power BI, and also like my recommendation for people that are just starting out and want to like jumpstart their knowledge about these programs and start using it in their own job, so, or their own personal projects. So that will be my recommendations.
Yeah, so that's great. Thank you, Diego, for your answers and your recommendations and your ideas that you're sharing with us.
Sure.
Yeah, so in my case, my passion for Excel started, as I mentioned before, when I was in school in Peru. So we had to use Excel a lot to represent our data, because we, as you guys might be aware, the engineering degree involves a lot of math. So we have to create models, and we have to use Excel a lot. And Power BI, my passion started in 2017 when I was in school, but here in the States. So it was, I knew right away that Power BI was a great tool. And as you guys mentioned, it's very affordable. You can find this tool for free if you want to create really, really nice dashboards. So you don't have to buy it, because you can use Power BI desktop and that's it, right? You can start playing with this tool. So that's when my passion started about these tools, about the sources that I used to learn these tools. I used face-to-face classes for Excel. I took a class, I think was back in 2004, if I remember correctly, when I took my Microsoft Office class, when I learned Excel and Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. I remember that it was quite fun those times. So in Power BI, I use a lot lynda.com. I used YouTube content as well. You know, nowadays you can find a lot of free content on the web. So I use those content. I use those types of content a lot. And also Microsoft also has their own blog about Power BI where you can find really, really nice tips as well. So yeah, I guess it's a combination of everything, right?
Yep.
And about my recommendations, as we mentioned before, if you don't know anything about this tool, hey, that's okay, man. That's okay. So everyone started the same way. So I didn't know anything about Excel. I didn't know anything about Power BI, but I had the strong desire to learn, right? If you have the strong desire to learn, if you have the passion for these tools, that's a good beginning. So, and then the rest is just practice, 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 right? So don't be afraid to make mistakes. So if you make mistakes, that means that you're trying something, right? And you're learning from your mistakes. So that's my recommendations.
That's quite motivating, Nestor. And
Yeah.
I would like to add another recommendation just real quick. I'm just remembering that a nice way for me and for many people to learn something is just learning something and teaching it to another person or to other people. That's a nice way to learn. Like if you do something, you can teach it to your manager, for instance. Like I did this by using this tool, and those people, they can ask you more questions and you start researching more about those functionalities, and that's a nice way for us to learn as well.
Yeah, you definitely read my mind, my friend, because I was about to say the same.
Oh man, sorry.
No, I'm just joking. So as you mentioned, Javier, the best way to learn is by teaching, right? Because as you're saying, hey, you get questions and you don't know the answer, so you right away go to look for the answer, right? And you're learning something new. Yeah, I totally agree with you about that.
Yep.
Do you have anything else to share, Diego?
That's all, man. Like,
okay. All right, thanks.
Start with tips.
All right, thank you. Let's go to the next point real quick. All right, guys. This is what we have, Excel and Power BI tips. This is the time that you guys need to shine. We have really, really nice tips to share with you guys. And Javier is gonna give us his first tips. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so you can share your screen, okay?
Yeah, right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
But what do you have for us today?
Actually, my first tip is with Excel. So I have a demo data set. It's a data set with, I think, it's 4,000 rows, more or less.
Okay.
So it's not that large, but it's just as an example. So we can see that in this data set on Excel, we have a few columns for orders, dates from these orders, customer names, like countries, regions, segments for this order. So many fields, many columns. So what I'm going to try to share in just really quick is how you can, it's actually Excel 101. So for the people that use Excel right now, this might be a little bit basic, but for the people that don't use Excel that much, this is going to be quite interesting because for me, having this kind of data sets, these kind of databases in Excel, you can summarize it really quickly, like in a second, without the need of using formulas. So, and this is by using pivot tables. Pivot tables are quite easy because you can just, with a couple of clicks, you can start summarizing data in a way that attracts people. For instance, when people see this data, it's quite difficult to understand what's going on, like what countries have more orders or what segments have more orders as well. So I'm going to create a pivot table as an example. And for the people that have more questions regarding pivot tables, I think that most of us have tutorials regarding like pivot tables, how to use them. So this is going to be real quick. And if you want to learn about that, you can just see our tutorial. So first, we don't have to create a table. And what I mean by that is that here, I have a way of inserting a table, but I'm going to do it for this purpose. So I'm going to just create this table, and then I'm going to insert a pivot table. So I'm going to insert it in a new worksheet. So that's okay. So after creating this pivot table, I'm going to have pivot table fields in this pane. And I'm going to add first the countries as rows. And for these rows, I want to count the order. So I'm just going to drag order ID here as values, and Excel automatically count the orders as default. So I'm just going to actually sort these orders, the count of the orders from largest to smallest. And I can see in a nutshell that from the data set, I have that France and Germany, United Kingdom, they are the ones that have more orders. So another cool thing that we can do with pivot tables is that we can just copy this pivot table and paste it here, and we can just change from country to segment. I'm just going to drag segment. So now I know that consumers, that segment has the more orders. And that was really easy for me to do it. And many people do these things by using formulas, using COUNTIF, for instance, and using different formulas. But with pivot tables, it's quite easy. And when you go to the same data sheet and you start populating with more rows, and you can just go to the pivot table and refresh it, and it will populate automatically the new count of orders in this case. So another good example with pivot tables is that this is basic, actually, what I'm doing. We can do many things with pivot tables. What I'm going to do right now is creating a new row for the ship date. It's here. Actually, it creates a hierarchy for years, for quarters, for the months, actually. And so, for instance, I can create like different ways to summarize the data with years, with quarters, and I can see it by the segments as well. And I can like change the design just real quick, like adding maybe subtotals at the top of the group so I can see the subtotals. And we can change many things in pivot table. So what I'm going to do right now real quick as well is creating a couple graphs. For instance, I can create a chart here for the countries. I can create another chart as a pie chart for this other pivot table, which is for segments. I can create another chart for the years, which is, we can put it this way, for instance. And, you know, we can do many things. And then you can create a dashboard with slicers and many other things. So that's just an example of what you can do with Excel. That's my first tip. I did it maybe in 3 minutes. I don't know how long it took me, but you can start just playing around with your data sets, just starting creating pivot tables. A recommendation that I would have is that every column that you have, it should have a purpose. I mean, sometimes we have like a column for countries in America and another column for countries in Europe and different columns like that. And it's mostly, I mean, we can have those countries in the same column, but you know, if you don't have that in the same column, you can actually do different things like transformating with other capabilities. But I mean, you can do many things, and that's what I'm trying to say. But try to structure your data in that way, and then it's going to be quite easy to do these things. So do you guys have any questions? Actually, what are your thoughts on pivot tables?
I think they're really powerful. I really like them. yeah, that's my impression about pivot tables.
Yeah, I agree. So pivot tables, they are very, very awesome, and you can populate information from everywhere, you know, and then you can start playing around with the tools that you have. Yeah, the main, I guess the main part of that is that you can create also dashboards, right? With these charts. So that's a great tool to do these dashboards.
Yeah, and then you can impress your boss and your colleagues, and that's amazing.
Yeah, definitely you can impress anyone.
So after this tip, I'm going to show you another tip with Power BI, which is quite related. So it's basically another basic tip with Power BI. So for the people that haven't used Power BI, this is going to be interesting, I would say. So I'm going to get the data from the same Excel, from the same data set. I'm going to open it, and we are going to see that I can load this data in a moment. So I'm just going to I'm going to check this off, and I'm going to load the same data from the same worksheet. So I'm going to load it. We have to wait just a couple seconds for this data set. And then in this pane, in the fields pane, you're going to see the same columns, which are called fields, the same as pivot tables. So real quickly, I'm going to add the same kind of graph. So for instance, I'm going to add the pie chart. I'm going to add the segments as legends, and I'm going to add the order ID as values, and it's going to count the orders by each segment. After that, I'm going to add this other graph that we added for countries, which is here as axis, and I'm going to add the values for order ID here. So we have the same graphs, and I'm going to add another graph which is going to be for the years. So I'm going to add the years here with the order date. I'm going to add the year as axis, and I'm going to add the same order ID as values. So now we know that in 2014, we had the most orders, and 2011 had the least orders. So a cool thing that we can do in Power BI and actually in Excel is adding slicers. So I'm going to add a quick slicer just to show you something. It's here. I'm going to add the year as well in this slicer. I'm going to have this slicer as a list so we can see each year. So I see in this slicer that I can select a year, for instance, 2011, and I can see that it changes for that year. So normally, if I don't add that year as a slicer, we would see all the years summarized for these charts. But now we can summarize the data for each year with this slicer. And what I would like to talk right now is that you can customize your dashboards with different interactions. And what I mean by that is that you can select a visualization, for instance, the slicer, and you can go to format, and you can go to edit interactions. After that, you can, sorry guys. So after that, you can, with the slicers, you can select which visualizations are going to filter or not. And for instance, if I want that, right now, I don't have any selections and I can see all the years, but maybe I want to see all the years in this visualization. So what I can do when I filter, so what I can do is just selecting this slicer, and I can select here that it won't apply any filters. So let's see an example. So I click none for this slicer, and now I can select any year in here in the slicer, and we can see that it changes for these visualizations, but not for this visualization in here. So that's just one example. I'm going to remove this, or I'm going to change it to filter, and I'm going to remove this slicer. What I would like to show you is another difference with filters or with interaction, and that is, for instance, if I select a year, like for instance 2011, I can see that it highlights the orders for this year for each segment, in this case for the countries and for these segments as well. So if I select another year, it would do the same, but sometimes it's quite difficult to know what's going on in here and what's going on in here, because I mean, there are many orders, so you can customize your visualizations, and instead of highlighting other visuals, you can just filter those visuals the same way that a slicer does it. So if I select these visualizations for years and I select filters instead of highlight in here, I'm going to select filters right now. I clicked it and we can see the change right now. We can see that when I select any year, we can see in an instant what's going on with each country instead of highlighting. That's, I mean, we have options. That's what I'm trying to say. And the same for the pie chart. We can select, instead of highlight, we can filter it, and we are going to see what's going on for each year right now. And you can do the same for every visualization. So I'm going to select pie chart. I'm going to select, right now, it highlights. I'm going to select filter for this, filter for countries, and it does the same. And this is quite interesting. Sometimes, for me, sometimes it's difficult to understand the pie chart highlighted segment. So I'm just used to filter pie charts sometimes, and that helps me a lot. So this is a really intuitive way for us to customize our dashboards and our visuals, and that's my tip. What do you guys think?
Oh, that's a great tip. And I think you explained to me when we have our interview in Spanish, right? About a month ago. Yeah, this is definitely a really nice tip.
Yeah, and it leverages the power of Power BI, right? Like really dynamic and intuitive, and like can I just click in here and it's going to highlight or filter the other visualizations, right? Yeah, that's some of the, like, something really powerful in Power BI.
Yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Javier. Thanks for sharing your tips with us.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Okay. So you guys see my screen, right?
Yes.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm going to go another route than from Javi. He was showing us something really graphic, visual. I'm going to go a little bit more to the coding place, or I don't know, configurations that are useful, that have been useful for me, both working with Power Query and Power Pivot here in Excel and also in Power BI, right? But are things that help you, like in every project that you have. So that's why it shows to showcase, or to show these tips, right? The first one, it's here in Excel, and it's it involves the using Power. What is Power Query, and you can see that my Excel, it's in Spanish. Sorry, I wasn't able to use it, to put it in English, but I'm going to be translating, right? So you go to data, and this is the part where, okay, yeah, this is the part where...
It seems like your dog has a tip as well.
Sorry?
It seems like your dog has an Excel tip as well.
Oh, can you hear it? Sorry for...
No, you're good.
He has started barking. And okay, so you can go to obtain, this is data, like data connections from a file and then from Excel. So I'm going to connect to a sales table, right? And that sales table, it's in the data, and you just look for your where your file is, and I'm going to open this one. It's sales, and you are going to see the usual what is the usual interface, right? When you are connecting to a table. So I'm going to click here where it says, in here it says transformar datos. In Spanish, it's, in English, it's load data, no, sorry, transform data. And it's going to open what it is, Power Query, right? You can see it here in the top, right? So here are several things that I want to showcase. For example, this, the promoted headers and change type, it's something really common with unstructured sources. And Power Query is basically trying to identify what type of data you have in your table or in your file, and it's adding these additional steps by default, right? And it can be really annoying, especially when you are going to be connecting several files to your project. So you need to start deleting the steps, and you need to do that for each file that you are loading or working with in Power Query, right? So the way that you can remove those defaults, it's going to File in here, then you go to Options and Settings, and you go to Query Options, and in here you have basically two groups, right? You have the global options and the current file options, right? And this is a default that you can only modify, well, at least what I know, it's that you can only modify it for the current file, right? So each time that you create a new file, this configuration is going to, you're going to need to add this configuration. So you just go to data loading, and in here it's going to say automatically detect headings and the column data type for unstructured sources. So you just remove that check mark, and it's going to stop auto detecting this, right? And I can show it, like what I can do is, so let me just remove this. And we are not going to save the file, so we're going to also load a new file, sorry, the same file, but again, like load it again, and it shouldn't appear. So you can see that those steps are not appearing anymore, right? So you can just start like transforming your data to like, so you can use it in Power Query, right? Sorry, for your analysis. And then you start adding all of your steps, right? And then once you have the file as you needed to analyze it, in Power Query, since it's a different model or program, like I don't know, model, yeah, like from Power Pivot, but you are usually going to be trying, not usually, but in a lot of cases, it's more powerful to work with Power Query and with Power Pivot, like in a joint way. So what you need to do is to, instead of just closing and loading this, that what this is going to do is just going to add a table to my Excel spreadsheet. And let me show that really quick. You can see that it's going to start loading. It's a kind of a big file. So it's around 500,000 rows. So it takes a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. And you're going to see that this table is already loaded inside Excel, right? The problem is that if I go to Query, like if I go to Power Pivot and I try to use this table in my data model, it is not going to be there. And this is something really common, that when you are just working out or when you are doing it like several times during the day or during the week, you can forget to load this to the data model, right? You need to go to load to and then add this data to the data model, right? So the problem with that is that it takes additional steps. And what you can basically do is, well, let me delete this. Yeah, I'm going to delete this query. And let me add, like, delete this sheet. And I'm going to do everything again. It's really fast, don't worry. From File, Excel, Sales, then we select Sales, transform data. And in here, like all of the steps again, like remove this and remove top rows. So that's 3 top rows and promote headers, right? So instead of just clicking here and close and apply, you need to go in here and click close and apply to, and that is going to give you the option to load your data, your table to the data model, right? The thing is that you need to do that always. So what if we change the defaults? We just go to File, Settings and Options, and then Query Options. And in here, you can change this configuration in a global way. So if we change this right now, it's going to, the configuration is going to be saved, and you are going to be like, you are going to avoid that step, right? So we just click here and we say, load this to the data model and not load this to a sheet, right? So in here, if I close now, if I click in close and apply, you're going to see that's going to load, that it's also going to load this, but it's not going to appear my table in here. But the table, it's going to be added to my data model, and I'm going to be able to work with Power Pivot like way easier, and you are going to be able to create relationships and everything that involves the data model, right? If I go to Power Pivot, and actually this is how Power BI works. In Power BI, you have the query editor, and that it's Power Query and Power Pivot working like more synchronized and not as different as separate models here in Excel. So you can see here that we have the query, and if I go to Power Pivot to manage, we are going to see that table in here, right? And we are going to be able to start working with this like as a data model, right? So that is a tip with Excel. Hopefully it helps you. I mean, there are other things that we can speak about this, but I'm going to go now to Excel, to Power BI, right? And in here I have the same table. It's like, I mean, it's the same table that we were working right now. And in here, usually, and for working in using best practices and to be able to use functions like intelligence function, time intelligence functions, you need to use what it's called a calendar table, right? So in here, in my data model, I just have one table. So that can give me some issues or trouble later on when I'm like analyzing the data, right? So in here, we need a calendar table. When you can create that calendar table using DAX, but if you use DAX, that is data analysis expressions, it's going to be difficult since you will need to know a lot of functions, like several functions to make it work. So what about, but it's easier when we do it in what is called a query editor, right? So how about if we go to query editor, that it's actually, they just changed the name like 2 months ago. The name now it's transform data. And that's going to open us the Power Query Editor, that it's also really similar to the one that we were seeing in Excel, right now. In here, I can add what it's called the calendar table. The only thing is that the default options for adding the calendar table are like, it's not dynamic, so it takes a lot of steps. So right now, what I'm going to show you guys, girls, is a way to do it in a dynamic way, right? So in the calendar, to add the calendar table, we need to add a new query, a blank query. This is like another query, but we are not starting from a file. Like this one started with an Excel file, and we are just going to start with a blank query, like anything. And in here, we can start writing what's known as a M code. And I'm going to use some functions, but you can just copy these functions and it's going to work for you. But I'm going to show you. So just start writing like equal sign and then list dot combine. And if this is like a tip that I can give you, if I press enter in my keyboard, we're going to see that documentation, right? So in here, we're going to use this function. But these functions takes a list of lists and merges them into a single new list, right? So in here, if I go to, so this is important because in sales, I have two columns, date 1 and date 2. So I need to know which is the minimum date in here and the maximum date in here, so that my calendar table includes all of the dates in that range, right? That is an important consideration or prerequisite for a calendar table. So in query 1, that I'm going to recall calendar. We are going to use this function, and we are going to mention or to invoke or to get those two columns. So in here, we are going to add a hashtag, and then these are called the I don't know what's the name in English, the two things at the top. So we need to write in here the name of the query, and it's sales. And in here, we need to add square bracket, and then we need to reference the name of the column. So the name of the column was date 1. And then in here, in here I need to add curly brackets, and I need to close the curly brackets. And then I need to add a comma. And in here, I'm going to write the name of the other column, right? So if I write in here date 2 and press enter, you can see that we now have a list of dates. This list of dates is actually getting me combining in a list the both columns, right? So in here, we now need to get the minimum and the maximum, right? And another thing that I want to mention in here is that you can add several lists and list like columns from different tables. So for example, if you have a budget table, you can combine the date column from that budget table and you can add it here, and it's going to also work, right? Just follow these syntaxes, right? So now we need to add a new step in here. So we just add a step with this, and it's going to...
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So for the calendar table that you just put together, so those dates are the combination of these two columns, right? Date 1 and date 2.
Yeah.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so that is important because maybe date 1 is just from, I don't know, like in here, date 1 is the invoice date, and date 2 is the shipping date or the delivery date, sorry, the delivery rate. And date, so in here, if you just consider the first column, you can leave dates out of range. That's going to mess up the model, right? So that is why it's important to have both all of the dates in one of the lists. Because in here now in the new step that I just added, I can get the minimum date from these lists. And I just need to write in here, like inside of the brackets, write hashtag. And I need just to write the name of the previous step or of the step that is getting the list of dates. So I just write source, and it's going to get me the minimum, right? I'm going to start going a little bit faster. It's taking some time.
Oh, take your time. No worries. Take your time.
All right, thanks. So we get that it's January the 3rd, 2017. We just copy this, and we now need to get the maximum. And here we just change minimum to maximum, and we press enter, and it's going to give us the maximum, right? So we just let it think for a while. Maybe in here, okay, so it's January the 3rd, 2025. So we can change the name in here, just change custom one to mean date, or yeah, mean date, and change the name of this to what's that? Let me change it. Name, max date, press enter, and now we need to create a calendar table using these two dates, right? So with that, we just add a new step, and I'm going to write here list.dates. It's a new function. It's another function. We can press enter, and it's going to give us the documentation. And here we can write, for example, I don't know, we wanted to start from May the 1st, 2020. We want a year. And I'm just doing this so you guys can see something. If I add up all of these and I invoke this function, it's going to give me these like syntaxes, right? So this is great because now I can copy this, like Control-C in my keyboard, and I go back to calendar, and instead of writing like just this, I can paste this. And I can change calendar using the function directly, right? So I just write list.dates, and if I press enter, it's going to give me the same dates, right? But we don't want that. What we want, and I can delete that. We want that the start date to be the minimum date, and we want the duration to be max date minus minimum date, and that is going to give us our calendar table. And it's going to be dynamic because it's going to be like working with new information that's being added. So in here, I can just write min dates, and instead of the 365, we can subtract or get the difference from max date minus min date, but this is going to give me an error, and I just want to show you the error because it's different data type. Okay, so it's giving me an error. The error is because it's getting this in duration, but in hours, minutes, and seconds. So what I just need to do is write duration dot days, and then so in here I need duration dot dates. Then I open the brackets. That is going to give me the duration, and I just need to add a +1 because it's removing the last date because of the difference. So in this, I just add the last date, and if I press enter in my keyboard, it's now going to, hopefully, it's going to be working. So when this ends, we are going to have a dynamic calendar table that if you want to use it in your own projects, like you can just copy these steps and adapt it to your, and add your own columns, your data columns, your date columns, sorry, and it's going to work for you also, right? So just give it a moment to showcase it. And now we have a calendar table that goes from January the 3rd, 2017, all the way to, I remember, I think it was something December 2025 or something like that. And in here, no, sorry, it was 1st of January 2025. And in here, well, we just need to convert this to a table, and we are going to have our own calendar table. And that is my tip. It's something that I think it can help a lot of the guys in here, and that's all.
And I wanted to add something. So from there, for many people that haven't used calendar tables, from the query editor, you can add columns very easy, like in a customized way for you to work with months or quarters, years. Like it's quite easy, right, Diego?
Yeah, actually, thanks for mentioning, because that is one of the things that it's like way easier to add the calendar table in Power Query than it is to add it using DAX. because in here, and just let me change the name of this column. I can just change it to date. I can just change this to data type date. And then I can just start adding like year and adding like month and week and everything that you need, right? So just let it think for a while.
It's a large data set, right?
Yeah, like I should have like only some rows before this because it's taking a while. It's almost.
I mean that's real life, because you know data is huge. That's how it works in real life.
Yeah, it's not as we always see it in YouTube, like straightforward. Sometimes it's something that takes a little bit more of time, right? So you just go to add columns, and you can just click in here in this bottom that says dates, and here you can start adding, like for example, what was the year of each one of these dates. So we add year, and it's also going to take a while, but it's going to add as a year, right? And then we can add the month, and then we can add the day. And all of those things are going to help you when you start slicing your information on Power BI visualizations, right? So it's going to allow you to understand better what is your data trying to tell you.
Yeah, I haven't used this type of way to get a calendar table, but it seems like interesting, you know, because it's easier, as you mentioned, it's easier to add new columns, right?
Yeah, it's way easier. And also you can avoid some problems, like when you use that, sometimes it can give you problems. So in this way, you can avoid those type of problems, right? So that's all. You just load this, and it's good to go. So just to remind you, these are the formulas functions that I used. First, get the list of dates, and then get the minimum date, then get the maximum date, then create the date lists, the list of dates, and then convert to table and rename columns, change type, and start adding all of the things.
More columns.
Yeah, more columns.
Yeah, I mean that's great, because I mean it's a lot of work at the beginning, but the good thing is you are basically copying the same code over and over, right?
Yeah.
If you want to replicate for a different project, basically use the same code and make just minor changes.
Sure.
Really good. Really appreciate your tips. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So before we go into this excellent Power BI tips, okay. So I have for my Excel tips, I have Excel shortcuts. You guys might be familiar with some of them, but I wanted to share it anyways, you know. And then I have only one Power BI tip. It's gonna be very, very quickly. I'm gonna do this very quickly, okay? All right, let me find the file real quick right here. Yeah, the first tip that I have is how to insert a pivot table, but by using a shortcut. And the next one is gonna be how to paste only values, so which is called paste special. And then the last Excel shortcut that I want to share with you guys is about how to move data between existing rows or columns. Okay, so 3 shortcuts. So be ready. All right, so how to insert a pivot table. I remember that Javier shared with us really nice tips about pivot tables. So this is a table that we have, and let's say that we want to insert a pivot table, but without going into these steps, because we know that we can click right here, insert, and then pivot table, and then we can get a pivot table, right? But we can do it by using a shortcut. So the only thing that we need to know is that we need to place you can select any cell within this table, okay, within this data. Any table, you can select any cell within this data. So it doesn't matter. You can select this one right here, right here. It doesn't matter. It has to be inside of this table, okay? So I'm gonna select this cell right here, and then I'm gonna press Alt and V at the same time. So it's Alt and V, right, at the same time. Hold down Alt and V, boom, there you have it, okay?
Okay.
And in this case, I can select any cell where I want to place this pivot table, because I want to place just in the same worksheet, okay? So I'm gonna place it right here and then hit OK, and then you can stop playing, right? So you can put product claim right here if you want. You can put right here, let's count, and then you can start playing, right? You can start doing whatever you want. So that was the first tip. Let's go back to this tab again. The second tip is about how to paste values only, okay? So there is a special way to do that, and we're gonna use this shortcut, Control, Alt, and V at the same time, okay? So let's do it. So right here, if you guys see this column, column K, so this is a formula, right? So we are adding claim cost, and then we are also adding shipping cost, and that's why we have right here total cost. So let's say that we want to copy these cells right here. We can do Control C, and then we're gonna paste those values right here, Control V. So what's happening there? So it's copying everything, right? It's copying the formula, right? And of course, we don't have values here. So that's why we're getting an error here. And in this case, 0 values right here. So we want to copy just values. So in order to do that, let's copy this, Control C, Control Alt V, boom. So this new window pops up, and then we have many options right here. But just for this example, we want to copy only values. So that's what we want to select, values, and then we hit OK. Boom. See right there? So we have right here only values, no formulas, no nothing. Okay, so that was the second tip. Let's go back to the tips tab again. So the next tip, this is a good one. I use this tip a lot at work. So how to move or copy data between existing rows or columns. Okay, let's go back to the claims tab. So as you guys see right here, I want to move the state column, column L. I want to move this column to here, next to city. So what I can do is select all this data, Control Shift down arrow, select this data, and then let's drag this into between city and shipping cost, and let's see what happens. So what's happening here is there is already data here. Do you want to replace it? If I say okay, if I say yes, I hit okay. So that's what happens. So we are losing data, right? And we don't want to do that. So let's go back again. So what we're gonna do is basically move this column let's move this column and place between city and shipping cost. But we're gonna use just a shortcut. So remember that we have to select this data. We already have this data selected. So we are good. And then we're gonna hold down Shift. And then we're gonna drag this right here. Can you guys see this vertical line?
Yep.
So that vertical line is between city and shipping cost, right? That's where we want to place state. So remember, don't release Shift yet. So now we are there, release it. Boom. See? So we are moving this data, in this case, state between city and shipping cost. And we haven't lost shipping cost.
Amazing.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Sure.
So that's a really, really nice shortcut that I want to share with you guys. Okay?
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so those were the 3 shortcuts that I have. So now let's go to Power BI. All right, so here we are in Power BI Desktop. here we have three different pages, okay? Have test one. It's taking a few seconds to load. We have test two. Here we have another visualization, and we also have test three, right? So we have visualizations among these three pages, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use just one slicer that we are gonna synchronize just one slicer, but that slicer will make changes among these three pages, okay? So remember that we have only just one slicer right here. Just to double check, right here we don't have any slicer. Right here we don't have anything either, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this slicer, and when we start playing with this slicer, so the changes are reflected in every single page. So how do we do that? It's quite straightforward. So we're gonna select this slicer, and then we're gonna go and select view. And right here, there is an option. It's called sync slicers. So we're gonna select that option. Okay, so after we select that option, so there is another window right here, sync slicers. Okay, so remember that we have three different pages, right? Test one, test two, and test three. So what we're gonna do here is I wanna make this slicer to appear in these three pages. So that's why you guys see right here an eye. It says visible. So I wanna make this slicer to appear in these other two pages. So that's why I'm gonna hit these options right here. And then also select this one right here. Okay, so the slicer will appear in these three. Of course, we already had the slicers in the first page, right? But also will appear in the other pages, 2 and 3. So after we do that, let's give it a try, okay? So let's check this page. See right there? You can see the slicer right there. And you can even change the location of this slicer if you want, right? Right there if you want. Go to page test 3. So you have right here the slicer again, right? And you can make this visualization even smaller if you want. If you want to have that slicer right there. Boom. So you can start making changes. Let's change this to a list. So in that way we can start playing with this. We can even make this a little bit bigger if we want, right? Let's hide this a little bit. Let's make the items a little bit bigger. 14, how about that? Okay, so let's start playing with this slicer. Let's say just 2010. This is just 2010. Let's check the other pages right here. See right there, just 2010. The other one, just 2010. Let's go back to the first page right here, and let's do multiple selections right here. Hold down Control and then select 11, 12, 13, and 14. See right there? See right there, it's changing automatically, right? And let's see if those changes are reflected on the other pages as well. Boom, it's working. Okay, so that's how it works, guys. I hope you guys found this tip very helpful. I don't know if you guys have questions or comments about this tip.
I mean, when you, Diego, and when you, Nestor, when you were explaining, I'm always thinking about the use cases for what you were explaining. And I mean, I think those situations happen in many requirements that clients or like business users, they might have. And this is quite common, I would say. Like sometimes, for instance, with Diego's topic, there are tables that have different date columns, and you need to merge them like in the way that Diego did. And also with this tip that you provided, Nestor, this is quite common, I would say, as well. When, I mean, adding slicers to a page, and then when we have other pages, we need the same slicer to be applied to those pages. So that's really nice.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So go ahead.
Yeah, what I wanted to add is, for example, if you can please select the slicer, Nestor.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, for example, in there, you can synchronize, and this is something that we should be careful about, right? What you just follow, it's the good practice, like to have the slicer visible in all of the pages where it is applied, right?
Right.
Other option to do it is to just synchronize the slicers without being visible on all of the pages. But that is not a good practice, because then people aren't going to know what are the filters that are being applied to the data, right? So I just want to pinpoint that, because that is something that people can usually, but I was guilty of that. Like I can how do you say, save space in my report by not showing the slicers.
Uh-huh.
It can create confusion, right, in the data. So just to mention.
Yeah, yeah, that's
it's a good practice.
right. That's a good idea that you were mentioning, because people might not realize that the slicer is, taking effect on that page, and they will say, hey, the numbers look different here.
Yeah.
But it's because there is a slicer on the first page. So that's why. Yeah, that's a good comment. All right, so that's all I have, guys, for my tips. Let's go back to the slide real quick and see what else we have. I think that's it for this part, for the Excel and Power BI tips. I hope you guys enjoy this part. And of course, if you have questions, comments, please let us know. Let's go to the last slide, my friends.
Awesome.
All right, so educational platforms. I know you guys are the experts. You have a lot of knowledge to share with the community. So please, Javier, tell us where the community can find you.
Well, thank you, Nestor, and thank you everybody that are listening to this conversation. So normally for me, it's been working to share content. Sometimes it takes a lot of time to create content. Actually, like you can see a video of 30 minutes and it took weeks, or like to actually to work on that tutorial. So it's really good that you guys are following us, and a place where you can know more about me and from my community. Actually, it's from LinkedIn. You can find me through my personal profile, or actually you can find that data on the link that you are sharing, Nestor, right now on the screen. You can also find me on udemy.com. On that link, I have some available courses in there related to Excel and Power BI. Also YouTube. You can find me on YouTube with different tutorials and tips as well. And that's it. So I just wanted to let you know, guys, that this was really awesome. The tips that you provided, I believe that the community is going to like it a lot. And also thanking the community. What I'm trying to do, and I think that Diego and Nestor, they are trying to do it as well. We are trying to provide the most value to the community, like providing this kind of content for you guys and letting other people know that we are here to help you guys. So hopefully this is going to be beneficial for you. And thank you.
I really appreciate your words and your time, Javier. I know you guys are busy, and this is a great opportunity to tell our community, the Power BI community, the Excel community, that we are here for them, right?
Big time.
All right, so Diego, tell us where we can find you.
Sure. Well, the first thing will be, well, also I'm in the same platforms that, that Javier. I have my YouTube channel where I share tips and how-tos and tutorials. It's also in Spanish. That's my main audience. I like to consume content in English and in Spanish also, but the Spanish market it's lacking. So that's why I'm focusing on creating content in Spanish. It's lacking people creating content, right? And this type of content. You can also find me on LinkedIn, send me a message with whatever you guys think. I'm always active there. And also on Udemy, I also have several courses, are all in data analytics and data visualization. And you can also find me there. And well, that's basically it. Like, I mean, those are my platforms. And thanks for seeing this. And hopefully, what we share here, it's going to help you on your career, making your job easier, or impressing your boss or your colleagues, or making you, or improving your personal projects, right? Because a lot of the times it's just for our personal projects. So that's. I just wanted to say thanks, right?
Thanks, Diego. Thanks for your time. Okay. So in my case, you guys can find me on LinkedIn as well. Here's my my website, the link to my website. Vizxlization is my company, and also you guys can find me on Facebook, Vizxlization as well. On Instagram, you can find me just by my name, Nestor Adrianzen. And of course, I'm also on YouTube. I have several videos, several tutorials in both languages, English and Spanish. So I know you guys, the guys who are following us, most of them are bilingual, so it wouldn't be an issue. If you guys want to start doing something in English as well in the future, I think that would be a great opportunity. So these English speaking people, they will take advantage of your content as well. Yeah, that's it for me as well. And do you guys have any additional comments or questions?
Let's think about a way to hear from the people that are listening to this. Like, if you guys can provide your feedback on this, that would be amazing.
Yeah, definitely. You know, feedback is always welcome. All right, guys, and I really appreciate your time, and thank you. Thanks again for being part of this discussion, this conversation, and I look forward to meeting again in the future.